cameras were rolling, bailiffs were moving, and Linda Carver, the perfectly pressed president of our homeowners board, lunged for the court clerk like she could snatch time out of the air and put her story back together. The judge barked for order. The gallery went silent, and I stood there thinking, oh, this is how truth looks when it finally stops apologizing. 8 months earlier, I wasn't chasing truth. I was chasing sleep. My mom had just lost her fight with cancer. I'd sold my truck to keep the lights on, and all I wanted was to sit on the porch of our old cabin in Cedar Ridge with a bad cup of coffee and a quiet view of the river. Instead, there was a white van at the bottom of my drive, big magnetic logo for Cedar Ridge Management Services, and a woman in a navy jacket with a clipboard and a tool belt, like it was part of a costume. She called me McBennett without asking how I was, and slid an invoice across my hood. $6,000 in management fees, $800 in penalties align items for landscaping and security monitoring and pest control, with a signature at the bottom that looked like mine until you paid attention. I said, that isn't my signature. This is either a mistake or fraud, and she smiled. The way professionals smile when they want you to notice how patient they are. Per Colorado statute 38-12-204. She said, properties abandoned for more than 6 months require professional oversight, non-payment triggers, an automatic lien in 15 business days. Like she was reading a bedtime story to herself. I called a deputy, looked at the papers, said civil dispute, and drove away. And I stood on the porch that night, with the invoice under a glass so the wind wouldn't take it, feeling stupid for not seeing it coming, and angrier than I'd been in years. You know what I mean. Next morning, a county utility truck idled at the end of my road. Binoculars up. No note. Then gone, and I understood this wasn't just about a bill. It was pressure. It was a performance. I called Tom Alvarez, my college roommate, turned Boulder lawyer, who can read fine print the way a mechanic hears a bad bearing. He said, document everything. Send me scans and get a neighbor witness. So I pulled in Mark Harlan, retired deputy meticulous man 2 doors down, and he told me straight. She's not a porch pirate. Cole Linda used to work in county planning. She knows where the records are soft, and when they digitized the old deeds back in the 70s, a lot of filings fell through the cracks, misspellings, fuzzy surveys. If someone wanted to exploit the seams, they could. That same week, the board slapped an orange notice of non-compliance on my door at 6 a.m. For an unapproved mailbox. An email blast called me an absentee whose negligence endangered property values and announced a new community protection fee, and then a text lit up my phone. Withdraw your claims in 24 hours, or everyone will know what really happened to your mother's money. And I don't care how tough you think you are. Grief is a bruise you carry under your shirt. 1 finger on it, and your breath changes. Yeah, that happened. Linda scheduled an emergency meeting at Cedar Ridge Methodist, the place where we've held bake sales and funerals, and she ran it like a campaign rally. Handouts and slide deck friends and neighbors. She said it we're under threat from an out-of-town land grabber who abandoned us for 8 months and now wants to weaponize technicalities to steal from hard-working families. She never said my name, didn't need to. Half the room looked at me like I'd tracked mud into their kitchen. I stood up to speak and told them about Mom, about the shakedown hiding under professional letterhead a guy in the back shouted. Convenient timing. You want us to hand over our deeds? And Tom tugged my sleeve and whispered one down. We won't win this with a speech. We'll win it with paper and patience. On my way out, Linda's assistant, Beth, drifted past me like she wasn't supposed to exist. dropped a folded receipt that had a number and 3 words. If things go weird, and that was the first honest breath I'd taken in days. We pulled in Rebecca Collins at the county clerk's office, a woman who sounds like she could alphabetize lightning, and she agreed to dig up original paper files. If I gave her specifics, I also went to see Rose Field 76, and still quick, who keeps a basement archive for our valley, the way some folks keep a pantry. She handed me a box labeled Bennett and poured tea while I sifted, and then I found it. A letter from 1974 in my granddad Samuel's tidy block handwriting. Finally got that 1962 boundary survey mess straightened with the Forest Service, should prevent future confusion. I snapped a photo, sent it to Tom, and 5 minutes later we were on speaker with Rebecca, Mr. Bennett. She said your family's original. 1953 filing shows a lot more acreage than a single lot. Then she said the number, and I sat down hard on a crate. I didn't just own a cabin. Our filing covered the valley where the development sits. It felt less like power and more like a responsibility I hadn't asked for. Tom said we confront Linda with witnesses and paper, so we walked into Cedar Ridge Management on a Tuesday afternoon. The waiting room was full. Linda smiled her service smile and asked if I'd chosen a payment plan, and I set the homestead filing on her desks. Carver, I said. Your office is on Bennett land. Cedar Ridge is on Bennett land. Her smile twitched. She dialed the clerk, a title company. A Denver lawyer flipped pages. Like friction might catch fire and change the words. Said, this is impossible. I verified 70 years of records. Her voice climbed a note. 2 clients raised their phones and hit record. And Beth met me in the parking lot after and whispered, she's been selling things. She's talking about bringing in the Forest Service federal boundaries. If she can muddy jurisdiction, every deed gets tossed in the air. 2 nights later, our motion camera pinged at 2:47 a.m., a figure with a shoulder hitch that Mark recognized from an old accident claim approached my back door, pried it open, spent 11 minutes inside, and left. Next morning, I found 3 letters in my desk, handwritten to look like me, full of threats and a private phrase my mom whispered to me. Her last night, a thing I never said out loud, and Linda used those to file an emergency restraining order. If the judge granted it, I would be legally locked away from my own porch, and I learned the particular cold that starts at your elbows when someone weaponizes your grief. So we ran not away, but toward the records Mark drove to Denver and back for certified boundary corrections. Rebecca faxed and stamped Tom's clerk, hustled filings between offices like a long relay. We prepped a federal packet to cure the 1962 mistake and filed it under the wire. While we did that, Linda launched a Facebook group, Cedar Ridge Protection Alliance, posted like a mayor out of state land grabber. Suspicious papers, protect our families, held a press event on the courthouse lawn, and then Channel 7 lined up a joint interview. She went first, and I'll be honest. She was good 3 years protecting families, video of block parties and cleanup days, and a pie contest. She wore an apron that said Mama Bear and spoke like stewardship was a sacrament. When the reporter looked at me, I didn't swing at her. I held up records. Explained Rebecca's pulls showed the 1974 letter. The reporter asked Linda to respond, and that's when the Polish cracked. Her voice pitched up. She said documents can be faked by anyone with money, ripped off her mic, and walked away. The clip simmered online. The boil came later, which brings us back to that federal courtroom Cedar Ridge buttons. TV vans outside Linda's opening with charts and elderly testimony, and a narrative about community standards holding back chaos. A woman named Margaret cried about the kitchen, where she taught grandkids to bake cookies. The judge listened, and then Tom stood with the calm of a man whose brakes are fresh and the road is dry. Your Honor, newly filed federal documentation resolves the discrepancy. He handed over certified copies and a fresh filing receipt. A federal surveyor named David Wilcox testified that the 1974 correction cured the 1962 boundary error. No outstanding federal conflict, and the room changed temperature. You could feel it, Linda said. The filing violated notice. The judge replied that the court had verified the timeline, and Linda made the worst decision of her life. She moved toward the clerk's table, like she might rip history out of a binder. Bailiff stepped in. The judge's gavel cracked, contempt, and the spell finally broke. After that, the dominoes fell fast. The state suspended her business licenses, pending investigation. The sheriff's office served warrants for breaking and entering evidence, tampering, and stalking, based on the camera footage. And those planted letters. Beth turned over emails that showed forged authorizations and fee stacking. Margaret found me on the steps and said, "I'm sorry we didn't know who to trust." And I nod, because what else do you do when people realize they've been living inside someone else's story? That evening, federal marshals sealed the door of Linda's office with bright tape. I looked through the glass and saw boxes like a cardboard reef around a desk with a fake plant. And I didn't feel victorious. I felt empty, tired, ready to sit on my porch and let the river file its own paperwork against the rocks. Before they let her out, Linda looked back at me and said softly, "You think this is over? You have no idea what you started." And maybe she meant lawsuits. Maybe she meant smaller, meaner things. Either way, I made a promise to myself. I won't become the bully. I fought. Tom drew up voluntary lease agreements for anyone whose parcel overlapped our old filing half-market rate opt-in, or don't proceeds go to road maintenance and emergency services. No pressure, no shame. We'll build a town that breathes without a hall pass. That's my story. Told the only way I know how. Plain and a little bruised and finally steady. Now tell me yours. Was I right to push this hard? Or did I turn into the thing I was fighting? HOAs actually protect neighborhoods, or just hand a badge to the loudest person in the room. What's the wildest rule or power play you've seen? Where you live, drop it in the comments. Argue with me. Defend me. Call me out. I read every word, and I think Cedar Ridge, and people like us who get shoved to the edges, could use your perspective.